When I'm not making these videos, I work with a lot of religious friars, and because of that exposure, I tend to assume certain things are sort of obvious Catholic trivia that my wife has informed me are absolutely not obvious Catholic trivia. So today I want to help distinguish the difference between friars, monks, priests, brothers, religious sisters, and nuns. Within the Catholic Church, there exists a wide variety of religious traditions and charisms, and ways of expressing different vocations. Every vocation is distinguished by the taking of vows, which the Code of Canon Law defines as a deliberate and free promise made to God about a possible and better good, which must be fulfilled by reason of the virtue of religion. Married persons make vows to one another to uphold their marriage covenant, while for those called to other vocations, they are distinguished by the taking of vows to either do or not do some particular additional good work for the rest of their lives so that they can better worship God. All Catholic priests are called to obedience to their superiors like their diocesan bishop, and are generally called to the exalted role of celibacy, in accordance with the words of St. Paul that, an unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord, how he may please the Lord, but a married man is anxious about the things of the world, how he may please his wife, and he is divided. Thus the priest lives with less division and devotes himself to the work of God and ministering to the people. Yet although the canons of the Church forbid the priest to live lavishly, the priest does not have any specific obligation to live a life of poverty, and may own property, often living by himself in a house provided by his diocese called a rectory. Though property is not evil, the renunciation of all or most of one's goods for the sake of the kingdom can lead to a special kind of perfection which disposes one to better love God. As Jesus said to the rich young man in the Gospel of Matthew, "If you wish to be perfect, go, sell what you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me." Following this ascetical principle to a much more maximal degree than is possible for an ordinary lay person or for a diocesan priest, the Church has long recognized the role of communities and individuals who live lives that are more fully devoted to the contemplation of God and to prayer. These communities in some of their earliest forms are what we today call monasticism, where foundational figures like St. Benedict of Nursia went into the remote places of the world to devote themselves to the vows not only of celibacy or obedience, but also poverty, sometimes forming religious orders of like-minded communities that still persist today, such as the Benedictines. Living according to a rule of life adapted from St. Benedict, these monks live and work in monasteries or abbeys, which have served and still serve as centers of learning, prayer, and the worship of God. Though living a life apart from the world that is devoted to prayer is a pious and noble pursuit, intermediate movements began to be formed in the 11 to 1200s, which retained the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, yet were essentially turned outward, with ministries devoted to preaching to the masses and serving the poor in a more active rather than contemplative manner, though still retaining an important life of prayer. Referred to as mendicants, a word which means to beg, mendicants lived off of the generosity of those with surplus food in order to perform their ministries, and their most famous figures were St. Dominic and St. Francis of Assisi, who respectively formed the Dominicans and the Franciscans. Rather than living apart from the city in a monastery, the ordinary dwelling place of a Dominican or a Franciscan is a friary which exists within a city, so that the members, who are called friars, can live among those that they serve. These mendicant orders put a new spin on the old monastic ideas, but neither group is totally exclusionary of the tendencies of the others, and either group could and has occupied a variety of different particular ministries. But how do these ideas of monasticism and mendicants relate to priesthood? While all the religious orders mentioned thus far have members who take the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, they do not all receive the sacrament of holy orders, thus not all of them are priests. Rather, a vocation to priesthood is a call within a call, wherein a person will both take on the charism or mission of their particular religious order while also taking on the duties and authority of a priest. Yet among Benedictines, Franciscans, or Dominicans, they have members who remain unordained, yet still with the three vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, serving in non-sacramental ministries that do not require ordination. What can complicate this situation for the average person is that a member of a religious order often has a singular uniform, habit, or other robe that identifies them. A Franciscan, for instance, will generally wear the same habit whether he is ordained or unordained, making it impossible to tell whether they are a priest before being introduced to them. If a member of a religious community in either the monastic tradition or the mendicant tradition is unordained, they can be identified by the word brother. A mendicant might additionally be identified as a friar, but this is just a word that derives from frater, which just means brother, so it's still just a roundabout sort of way of saying essentially the same thing. If either a monk or a friar is ordained, they can be referred to as father, just like a diocesan priest, but they may also continue to be referred to as a brother, since they do not lose their connection to their religious order when they become ordained. In addition to orders which wear a habit to designate them from diocesan priests, there are orders such as the Society of Jesus, better known as the Jesuits. Though Jesuits may look identical to diocesan priests, since they normally just wear a Roman collar, they are also a religious order that adds an extra charism of Ignatian spirituality to their priestly ministry. Though Jesuits are most commonly known for their priests, they too can have lay brothers who accept vows but do not take holy orders. To add a layer of complexity to everything said thus far, there is also the feminine side to religious life. Saint Benedict famously had a sister named Scholastica. Just as Benedict formed an order of Benedictine monks who were devoted to a special kind of poverty and contemplation of God, Scholastica formed a congregation of nuns who lived according to that same tradition. Many religious orders have these sorts of complementary movements. For example, when St. Francis started a group of Franciscan brothers, he inspired a woman named Clare who created the Poor Clare Sisters to imitate this same simplicity of life devoted to the Gospels. As women do not take holy orders, there is no distinction between ordained versus unordained nuns and religious sisters to keep track of, and it is generally appropriate to refer to any nun or consecrated religious woman as sister, even though a nun is generally cloistered and has an emphasis more on prayer than work with the poor or infirm, like you might see with other religious sisters. Of course, not all religious orders have these parallel male and female versions. The aforementioned Jesuits don't have religious sisters, while orders such as Mother Teresa's Missionaries of Charity don't have male members. Yet generally, many of the largest orders do adapt their charism to both sexes, and may even have special associations for laypersons who do not live lives of celibacy and poverty, yet participate in a minimal way in the spirit of that charism. The Code of Canon Law describes these orders as associations whose members share in the spirit of some religious institute while in secular life, lead an apostolic life, and strive for Christian perfection under the higher direction of the same institute are called third orders or some other appropriate name. For instance, an ordinary married layperson might discern becoming what is known as a secular Dominican, and thus modeling their life after the preaching of St. Dominic, yet continue to live and work in the world. This video is by no means exhaustive of every religious order that exists, but hopefully the overlapping role of religious versus priest and nun and sister are clearer than they were before. Thanks for watching.